Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I'm really delighted about today's guest, Jimmy Cannon, and he's from the UK, and he teaches people how to use their voice and how to tone and hone their voice in public speaking so that they can speak with confidence and presence. And so for a lot of the audience, they on social media, YouTube, a podcast, actually in stage speaking. Jimmy Cannon's the guy. I'm really happy to have him on and really pick his brain and how people can work with him. Jimmy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you coming on and talk about what you do and the clients you serve. And
Mm,
because you have a interesting ACT. And so talk
mm.
about that.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. To talk about ACT, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fine. It was something that I wasn't aware of at all. And my mentor, my MA, I'm in awe of your qualifications, Dr. Lou. So
Yeah.
I'm very hesitant to talk about my mere masters, and you're a physician, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Fantastic. What's your speciality, if you don't mind me
I'm in
asking?
surgery.
Okay, incredible. Wow. Absolutely incredible. I'd love to ask you some questions. That's great. So, when in the middle of my MA, I was talking to my mentor, Debbie, and she said to me that I was saying that most of my clients coming to me were complaining about tight throat and like straining and nervousness and just not wanting to speak and an anxiety. And she said, you should study acceptance and commitment therapy because it's absolutely what you need to do. The whole methods and the whole sort of ethos around it is purely around performance anxiety, also, or more specifically, public speaking anxiety. And so I did, and that's what I ended up studying after my master's and a couple of years studying as a behavioral therapist. And it's been fantastic. It's something that if you like, embellish my coaching really with, because most people are coming to me, as I said, with a complaint about not being heard, or they're not speaking up, or they're maybe avoiding certain situations or environments where they need to speak, so, interviews, etc. And the combination of what I do with, I'm slightly biased, but we all have a different technique and a different method and approach, I presume. And my approach is a holistic approach, which is voice, confidence, and presence. And the voice is really about the physiology of the voice, creating more resonance and tonal variety, pitch variety, dynamic range, and that type of thing, as well, which gives people confidence. If they don't have to worry about their voice, if they feel confident and they feel that they have a strong voice, then they have to be concerned about that. But what they might be doing also is experiencing some form of anxiety
Mhm.
or just nerves, etc., before, during their speaking. And so I use values, committed action to values, mindfulness exercises, present moment exercises to strengthen the psychological flexibility and to diffuse them from negative thoughts. So that's what I focus on really, as well as some acting techniques to do with presence as well and confidence, body alignment, that type of thing. So it really very much depends on the individual, but that's the sort of the three-prong approach, which is the voice and confidence and presence, which I help people with.
Mhm. Fascinating. So we'll dive into it. Working with clients, what are some common body mechanical issues that are preventing them from having a good, strong voice?
I think the main thing, I always start with breathing. So the main thing is about the breath, and most people don't really know how to breathe properly. Most people are taking, I do that, I'm not hesitating, but I'm taking a pause, I'm taking a deep breath. I'm habitually taking a breath through my nose quite often these days. And I teach that. It's not something that is in my armory, but taking a very deep breath in through the nose
Mhm.
is a really great way to connect directly to the diaphragm. And what we want to do is allow the diaphragm to contract and release and lower down. And I'm hesitating because I know you know all about this, but but so I'm making sure I get my terminology. But to make sure, as we're taking a breath in, we're filling the lungs and we're using enough breath. And then we're also, the most important thing is to use that breath as we're speaking. So if we're not supporting that breath as we're speaking, it disappears, it dies. So if we've got strong convictions about our message and our ideas, then we want to emulate that into our breathing and into our sound. So I've come up actually with a coined a phrase, if you like, recently, which is one breath, one idea. And I don't quite know which way it should be. One idea, one breath, or one breath, one idea. I'm not sure yet, but it seems to make sense with me that there's one breath and you distill that one breath with one idea, or vice versa. So
Mm,
as you're speaking, you have one idea, one concept in your head, and you use that breath, that one breath, to engage the audience with that idea, or to deliver that message with one idea. And then when you need to talk about the next idea, you take a breath and then speak again.
Interesting. The follow-up question was talking about one of the common issues is, for example, I had a colleague of mine, a friend, we were just having lunch and he was talking about he'll go to the gym and after a workout, his voice is very tight and sometimes he'll have to communicate, but after working out, it's hard for him to speak because it's just his voice is very windy and high
Mm,
pitched and tight. What's
mm.
going on there?
Interesting. So that could be a physiological or somatic response to some sort of anxiety. It could be muscle dysphonia. So it could be that there's a psychosomatic response to it. I'm
Yeah.
not sure about the physical aspect, actually. I'm not sure about the idea of it being, if you're overproducing oxygen, or I don't know if you would have the answer there yourself, but there's something going on there, I presume,
Yeah.
with the amount of oxygen that he's creating, as he's working out. But if it's changing the shape or it's contracting the vocal tract, it's that's a response to something. So
Mm,
the idea would be to relax, really relax the muscles, so he can lower the larynx, or at least allow the larynx to be more flexible as he's breathing. If the vocal tract is tight, then it's normally a somatic response to something, to some sort of anxiety, and
mm,
therefore it's worth doing a few exercises to release that tension, and also to think about what's the symptoms, why are these symptoms happening. So
mm.
that could be a fear of being judged, it could be a lack of self-worth, imposter syndrome, or something like that. But that I don't have an answer to that. I must admit, I don't know why that would be happening, at least the vocal tract being tightened by overuse of exercise or over exerting themselves. I'm not sure what that might be. What do you think?
I mean, it's quite interesting because he does suffer from a little bit of like social anxiety, just like
Yeah.
how people perceive him or just what other people think. And he was telling me just after a workout, he's just very tired and he's been breathing. So it's just, does he want to use that extra energy to talk or communicate? Because that takes energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. If he's overexerting himself, yeah, and he's heavily breathing, especially if it's upper chest breathing and he's lots of short breaths, I think that would make sense for the tightening of the vocal tract. So especially if he's got social anxiety, and that would absolutely make sense that if he's suffering from that, for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned the one breath, one idea, one breath technique,
Mm,
but what's one small voice shift that can immediately change how others perceive you?
I think slowing down your
Mm,
speech, I think that's really key, and it's something that I really have to work on. And I get very passionate about what I talk about. Not so much. I am passionate. I said before the podcast, I've got a bit of a headache. So in a way, it's sort of helping me just to control my energy. Although and the interesting thing that's slowly going, the more I talk about things that I'm interested in, and having an interesting conversation like this, it gets rid of your headache. This is the cure for headaches, or talk about something you're interested in. I think the most important thing would be to slow down your voice. We are talking far too quickly. I think we are. It's innate tenfold with social media now, that we are just expecting to speak very quickly now. I think that the new generations are coming up behind us, or me anyway, and speaking very quickly. And I think that's the thing. What we need to realize when we are speaking, especially in this situation, or we're pitching, or we're presenting, or teaching, that our audience needs to process what we've just said, and that can take a little bit of time, in a few seconds. And it's also useful to be able to process what we're going to say next. to give it a little bit of space. And I use the analogy of music. I've been a musician most of my life, and silence in music is arguably as important as the music itself.
Interesting. The other we'll talk about techniques, and
Yeah.
you mentioned this, the just slowing down the pace. What's your advice, or can you share a specific technique someone can use today to sound more confident even when they're nervous?
Talking about the one breath, one idea, there's a lot of research done on elongating the breath. So elongating the phrases. So rather than see if we're nervous, there's a tendency to use short breaths, upper chest breaths. There's a tendency to not stop and take a breath. So we want to complete our idea as quickly as we can. So by elongating the breath or stretching out the vowel shapes and elongating the phrases, what actually happens is there's a direct message to the parasympathetic nervous system, which directly to the vagus nerve, and says, actually, don't worry. We don't need to kick in the fight flight response. We can just relax a little bit more. And that elongated phrase, as well as the deep breathing. So the deep breathing will release endorphins. It will settle the heart rate a little bit. But it's mainly the out breath that we need to focus on. So think about this. Think about, I'll give you a quick exercise, which is called intoning. So intoning is very similar to maybe a Buddhist might be chanting, if you like, on one pitch, right? So if I was to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what I'm doing is I'm allowing the vowel sounds to resonate, and I'm really accentuating the color and the tonality of the vowels. So by slowing down the vowel sounds, slowing down everything, all the words, all the syllables, and really enjoying the sound of the vowels, that's what I'm doing. So by elongating the length of the phrase or the out breath. So that's one thing that you can do as you're speaking, is to stop, to take a breath, particularly through the nose. One other thing is to take a breath through the nose, but silently. Okay. So silently, this is a crazy idea, right? And this is, by the way, this is not completely my idea. This is found ideas like pretty much everything is these days. If you take a breath through the nose, firstly, you're bypassing the oral cavity, so you're not bringing in cold air. And so that's really good for to sustain, especially if you're working in an environment where there's lots of aircon or you're speaking outside. So taking a breath through the nose also takes longer to take a breath in. And the beauty of doing it silently, if I'm not going to do it now because this is terrible radio to do it silently, but if you do it silently, what happens, you have to really relax your jaw, lower the tongue, and you have to open the larynx. And when I say open the larynx, I mean allow the larynx to be very flexible and to widen slightly. So if you give that a go for 3 seconds, we're just going to do it for 3 seconds. Take a breath in through the nose. And you'll notice there's a direct connection to the diaphragm, which is lowering, and the belly's coming out as you expand the lungs, and the larynx is opening and expanding, and you're taking a much deeper breath. So that enables the endorphins to be released as well. It gives you some time to pause, and then using that breath as you're speaking out a long, elongated phrase is really useful.
Fascinating. We have around 3-4 minutes remaining before people can find you and connect with you, follow you, and reach out to you if they need help
I didn't
or
realize the time. I'm so sorry. I must apologize for speaking far too much. The
um,
irony.
one question is, what's
Mm.
the canon method and how does it help people go from overlooked to owning the room?
Okay, so I think the Canon method is my 3 pillars, which is voice, confidence, and presence. So you want to feel confident about your voice. In fact, I had a client say to me a couple of years ago that he doesn't want to have to worry about his voice. So that's really important. Is that he just doesn't want to have to think about how he's coming across. He doesn't have to worry about the perception of himself or the perception of others. So we work on the voice. We allow the voice to be free, really, and to flow. We're looking for a flow state, and that means that as soon as we start using the breath, that sound mimics exactly and authentically what the message is coming from your mind or cognitively. So that's what we want, is a direct cognitive connection from your idea to the voice. The next thing is confidence. Confidence is about being okay with who you are and what you stand for and why you're doing what you're doing. And having a purpose, having the why, to quote Simon Sinek, and knowing why you're doing something. If there's a reason why we're both here and there's a reason why we're doing what we're doing, and I presume that you like, you're interested in talking to other people and finding out information and spreading the word, if you like, which is fantastic. And the audience is thanking you for that, I'm sure. And that's a decent reason for doing what we're doing. And I want to help as many people as I can with my method. Having these values, there's no really real reason to feel worried or anxious about doing it because it's an authentic reason for doing something. The present side of things is purely to allow our energy, whether that be the breath or our voice or our ideas, to fill the space that we're in without arrogance, but with humility. So
Mm,
without feeling that we should fill that space in a kind of a sort of narcissistic way, but fill the space in a way that is empathic. So that's presence really. So voice, confidence, and presence, and and to do that, I use a combination of voice techniques, ACT, and leadership coaching as well.
interesting. What I really find, so how can people connect with you and find you on social media and get help with their voice?
Fantastic. I have a YouTube channel, which is, I believe, Jimmy Cannon Voice Coach. And if you just put Jimmy Cannon Voice in, hopefully the Google gods will help you find me. So I have over 300 videos on the YouTube channel and 20 odd thousand subscribers. So we're doing pretty well, but it could do much better. If you want to subscribe, you're more than welcome. And also my website, which is jimmycannon.com.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Oh, we do have one question from the live stream in.
Oh wow, I
What,
didn't know we were live. My wife. I would have done my hair and everything. Yep, yep.
what's your advice to someone who's confident in conversation but freezes up when it's time to present or pitch?
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so normally it's the other way around, actually, and most people I work with are not so confident in spontaneous conversations. So that's really good that you are confident in conversation. That means that you're very interesting to talk to, and you've got a lot to say. And I would love to have a conversation with you. I'm sure you would. Is that Jane Mills there? Oh no, somebody else. That's somebody else. Sorry,
Yeah.
not the person you're speaking to. So not so confident to pitch. That would probably be a lack of confidence in how you're perceived and that you're worried about making mistakes because there's a lot more pressure in pitching and presenting than there would be just having a general conversation. So my advice to you actually not off the top of my head, but there's lots of things, lots of techniques that I can help you with. But my main advice would be to treat the presentation like a conversation and maybe start the presentation with maybe a Q&A, and you could have a conversation with the audience, and then therefore you feel much more confident and you can carry on and not worry too much about the structure of the presentation. Have a structure but minimize it as much as you can. Get rid of all the text behind you on the decks. Use bullet points. Have a very simple three ping or prong structure and stick with that.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed this conversation and keep up the great work.
I will do. Thank you for having me.